Today I'm recording outside because it's so goddamn hot, and I'm going to be reviewing Planet 40k's competitive 1000 point Quirky Necron list. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, this is the second video in a collaboration that I did with the awesome Planet 40k. Basically, we made a 1000 points list each, and then we're going to review each other's lists on our channels. Now, to be clear, this isn't a who can make the best list, a collaboration. This is just some fun to hopefully, well, give you some ideas with some lists. And if this series goes down well, we're going to do this for other point sizes as well, maybe 500 points, 1500 points or 2000 points. So if you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments box below. Now, if you're not subscribed to Planet 40k yet, then seriously check the link below, head on over and give him a sub. Check out his video that he's made on my list because it's going to be interesting. Our lists are very different, and as you can see from the screen, he's got a membership area as well, which of course so do I. So if you want to support our channels, then check out our memberships. All you have to do is press the join button below the video to find out more. Right, let's have a look at his list and, well, see what we think of it. Okay, so first up, Planet has chosen the Silent King. Of course, not in my list, and straight away that's why our lists are very different, because the Silent King coming in at 400 points, although it has come down in recent changes, is quite a big points sink. Let's face it, at 1000 points that just gives you 600 points left to spend. Very small in terms of supporting units for the king. However, of course, the king is awesome. I think we already know that. I mean, he has good weapons in both shooting and close combat. Of course, he's a core unit now, so he gets to have the core buffs, and that includes giving his own buffs to himself. Pretty awesome. Plus, of course, he buffs other units around him, and not only that, he's got some anti-psychic abilities. So overall, well, the Silent King, you have to say, is an awesome unit, but fitting it into a 1000 point, I must admit, I was a little dubious. I think the issue that possibly you would have with the Silent King, of course, is, well, making the list work, and it's going to all depend on whether your opponent has the ability to take out the Silent King, because if he doesn't, well then I think you've got a very good chance of winning the game. But if your opponent has something to deal with the king, you could be in trouble very early on. However, it does depend on the supporting units and how you're going to score the points. So let's have a deeper look at this list. So Planet has taken the Necron dynasty. That gives him the 5+ save against mortal wounds and a re-roll of a single wound roll. Now the king of course can't benefit from that, but he's going to be taking the Necron protocol, Undying Legions, +1 to living metal and a re-roll of an RP. And living metal on the Silent King, that extra living metal is going to be really useful. Now, I wasn't 100% convinced that the Necron dynasty was the way to go with the king in the list. I know it's his own dynasty, but I was a bit dubious about that until I saw the next entry in the list. And that was a Technomancer. So heading up a patrol detachment is the Technomancer. Now, I must admit, my first thought here was, okay, he's taken the Necron dynasty, he's got the Technomancer, he's going to try to bring back the Menhirs. However, the Technomancer isn't actually going to go with the Silent King. I'm going to jump slightly ahead here, and the Technomancer is going with 3 heavy destroyers. So 3 heavy destroyers in the heavy support slot. No surprises there, I've got those. And he's going to put them with the heavy destroyers to try and make use of things like rites of reanimation. Now the Technomancer is going to have the cloak and also the vow, so good movement if he gets into trouble. Now I did mention about putting the Technomancer with the heavy destroyers in my list video, and I said I don't like to do it because, well, you lose one heavy destroyer and then all of a sudden your Technomancer is open for being targeted. However, Planet 40k has stopped that from happening by taking the Prismatic Obfuscatron, however it's pronounced, 15 points, and that of course means that you can only target the Technomancer if he's the closest unit, which really helps him survive with those heavy destroyers. So I think a good move there, but it also made me again double think about whether the Necron dynasty was the right dynasty for this list, especially if you're not making full use of that Technomancer with the king himself. Now yes, we may get an FAQ, or if you're going to an event, the tournament organizer may say no, you can't bring back Menhurs. That's fair enough. So yeah, maybe he's just not edging his bets with the rules on that one, but I know he does like to put the Technomancer with those heavy destroyers because he's done it in previous lists, and well, I'm sure it must work for him. So with the Technomancer and the heavy destroyers in the list, we're going to open up a patrol detachment, and just like in my patrol detachment for the troops choice, Planet has taken 5 Gauss Blaster Immortals, a nice cheap troops choice, just 80 points. Put them in terrain and you've got a good cover save, some decent shooting and AP. You can't really go wrong for 80 points, especially when you only have 600 points to spend on the other stuff after taking the Silent King. And then in the fast attack choice is taken 3 Scarab Swarms. You can't really go wrong with these. 45 points only, a nice small unit, you can hide them behind terrain. They are multi-purpose. 3 does limit you a little bit on what you can do with them, but as I said, with the points that you're sinking into that king, you're not going to have too many options. So now we come to the quirky side of the list, and I have to say, when I first saw this I thought, wow, that is really quirky. 2 Triarch Stalkers with particle shredders. Now the shredders are half decent weapons, and of course they keep the points down, so you're looking at 240 points here. But 24 inches, 8 shots, strength 6, -1 AP and 2 damage, not bad. In close combat you've got 3 attacks at strength 7, -2 and 3 damage. Now of course these are going to be sitting next to the Silent King. You could potentially will be done them. They're going to re-roll the hits for shooting, they're going to re-roll the wounds in close combat. Well, I can see the plan here, and of course these are core now, so it's nice to be able to play something different and have some different rules, so I can see why he's put them in the list. However, targeting relay, I mean, if you're taking a Triarch Stalker, shouldn't you be making full use of targeting relay? And Planet specifically said that they're not actually in the list for the target relay ability. They're there because of their shooting and assault ability. He wanted a unit that's sort of multi-purpose, and they're pretty survivable with their wounds and their quantum shielding. So you've got a big blob there, the king and the 2 stalkers, with quantum shielding on the stalkers, and of course the invulnerable save, and then the king with his invulnerable save, and you've got them working together with both anti-infantry and anti-tank, of course backed up by the heavy destroyers with their anti-tank guns. Other guns in the list, you've only really got the Immortals. I suppose they could take use of the targeting relay, but the targeting relay does grind on me a little bit. However, I think you have to look at the list as a whole. So the tactics of the list is to use the Protocols of Undying Legions, +1 to Living Metal. It's going to be really useful. You do get to re-roll 1 RP roll as well, but obviously that's not quite as good. So the Stalkers will flank the Silent King and get all of the buffs. Of course, mine will be done. +1 to move, re-roll shooting hits, and re-roll close combat wounds. You've got some anti-tank and anti-infantry, as I discussed, and the Cryptics will go with the heavy destroyers, giving you that D3 heal and of course right to reanimation, and having that good movement with the cloak to keep up with the heavy destroyers, and of course the Veil of Darkness to just vow out of trouble if you need to. So the Immortals and the Scarabs are going to go between the Silent King and the Heavy Destroyers. They're going to screen the Heavy Destroyers the best they can. They're going to sit on objectives, and if needed they could do actions. So that's what they're there for. 2 very small units with fairly big jobs to do, but again with the big points sink, you haven't really got too many options there. Now, secondary objectives, we've got Code of Combat, pretty obvious, you can't go wrong with that. If you have the Silent King, you're taking Code of Combat, and unless you get taken out sort of first turn, you're going to get some good points with him. Purge the Vermin is next, and I think that's a go-to one really, because it's just stopping your opponent getting into quarters, and if you've got the King and 2 Triarch Stalkers pushing forward, well, potentially they may back off slightly from that big blob. So I think Purge the Vermin should be pretty decent. Now, he wasn't quite sure about his third secondary objective. It was either Grind them down or Hubdur the Witch, however you pronounce that. I don't think I pronounced that right. And of course it depends on your opponent. Now I played a grind them down quite a lot in the old Necron data rules because it works pretty well with the Silent King's Code of Combat. You're killing stuff, that's what you're trying to do. So grind them down could be pretty good. You might be slightly susceptible because of your small unit, so you do have the Scarabs and the Immortals. Potentially the Heavy Destroyers could be a fairly easy kill to maybe stop that. But as you say, I don't think you've got too many sort of other choices. Now I think primary objectives could be the weakness in this list, scoring those objectives with a lot of single model units like a Triarch Stalker on an objective. It's going to be pretty easy to take that objective from you. So that's the list, and I have to say, when I first saw the list I was thinking, how is this going to work? But seeing the battle plan, I'm more encouraged that actually I think this could do pretty well. Now I was looking at how I could potentially make this list better. Maybe drop one Stalker, add in a unit to take advantage of the targeting relay, like maybe Annihilation Barge or Tomb Blades. But to be fair, you'd just be keeping that unit next to the Silent King like you would the Triarch Stalker anyway, so there'd be no real advantage to that. So I think you just have to overlook the fact that you're not taking use of the targeting relay in this list. I did think about using some Locust Destroyers with Exterminator guns for that extra range, and maybe upgrading one of those to a Heavy Destroyer. Potentially if you could take maybe 2 units of those. But again, I just don't think it's going to be as good as what you've got. You could drop the Stalkers and maybe add 2 units of 2 Spiders, but with the points that you got, you couldn't get guns on those Spiders, and that goes against what you're trying to achieve with the list. So I couldn't really sort of adapt your list to make it any better, really. So I thought maybe I'd have a go at sort of building the list from the ground myself to see what I could do. Now the Silent King does take up a lot of points, so you just don't have many points to spend, especially when you've got a HQ and troops to put in the list as well. So I actually found it really difficult to build a better list from the ground up. The best I could do was to drop the Technomancer, maybe add in a Luminor Xerus, then swap 2 of the Stalkers for 3 Spiders. Illuminor would augment the King and the Spiders. He would go behind the Silent King near the units of Spiders, allowing me to use my double rights of reanimation on the Menhirs or on the Spiders themselves. You could then unlock yourself from the Zerican Dynasty, maybe go for Novok for that +1 to strength. Now I don't have enough points to put guns on the Spiders, and I know you wanted the units next to the King to have guns as well as melee. I think your list is as probably good as you could probably get it for what you're trying to achieve. So in my humble opinion, I have to say a thumbs up for your list. I actually think it's really good, and I think I want to play it because it looks like a lot of fun as well. Of course I'm going to be playing my list. I might get Richard to play your list. We could have a list on list battle report on the channel. One day I hope to get together with Planet 40k and we can have some games as well, but maybe that's going to be something for the future. For now though, if you enjoyed this video, then check out the list videos that Planet 40k and I have done, and here's a link to Planet 40k's channel. Head on over and give him a sub.